AskReddit. Cops of Reddit. What's the most bullshit sounding excuse you got that actually turned out to be true? My dad is an officer and he pulled someone over for speeding and running a red light, and they said their breast implant burst. He called IMS to rush them to the hospital, and turned out it did, and it's actually very dangerous if they leak. Edit. Thanks for my first silver. I used to work as a military police officer. I was working at the main gate one night and this guy tried to come on base, but he didn't have any ID other than a driver's license, so I couldn't let him on. The guy told me that a general said he could come on, but he didn't have any proof of that, and he didn't know what the general's name was. It was also super late at night and he didn't seem to have any answers that would help us identify who he was. Long story short, the dude ended up being legit and was coming on base to be awarded a silver star the next day from that general. Edit. Since a few of you guys are asking what he earned the silver star for, I did some digging and found this for you all to read if you're interested. Also, turns out I was wrong about the silver star. This guy had a silver star already and was being upgraded to a Navy Cross. Former park ranger. First week in the job we pull up and see a couple of kids smoking in their car with the windows down. The city has an ordinance against smoking on park property, but it is too petty to give them a ticket. We approach the car and they are visibly nervous. My FTO looks through the windows and sees a couple of beer cans in the car. Bingo. We get them out and start running their info. They are all underage but old enough to smoke cigarettes. My FTO asks them where the beer came from. The driver says he recycles. FTO laughs and begins to search the car. I'm finishing up running their info, and these guys are being really respectful. FTO finishes searching the cab and goes to open the trunk. All of a sudden I hear him bust out laughing. He is laughing so hard he can barely breathe. He waves me over to look at the trunk of the car, and it is level with crushed cans and bottles. My FTO said that he has heard that excuse for 20 years and this is the first time it was true. He walked up, uncuffed the driver and let him go. Edit. There were a lot of interesting questions in the comments, and I felt the need to answer a few of them. FTO field training officer. New officers are assigned a training officer out of the academy. The length of time they are assigned to an FTO varies by department. Handcuffed. In California and the US in general, cuff rights are very loose. The general rule of thumb is we can cuff you for officer safety if we have probable cause, PC, for a crime. In this situation smoking in the park was all of the PC we need. Beer in car open container laws vary from state to state. California has some of the stricter laws where you can get a DUI if the keys are in the car and you are drinking. I have heard that you can get a DUI as a passenger, but I would have to look that up. Park ranger. The title of park ranger is very general. There are interpretive rangers who are there as historians, naturalists, and for park information. There are firefighter park rangers who go through full fire academies and drive fire trucks or brush trucks, pickup truck with a fire hose and water tank. There are safety officers who are essentially security officers that have the power to issue parking tickets. They will often be assigned to police officer rangers for force multiplication. When tacked onto a police officer ranger they can perform most duties that a police officer can while under their direction. Then there are police officers. They either go through their department's own police academy or get added into other departments' police academy. Our department, City of Los Angeles, used LAPD and LA Sheriff's academies. Some departments allow the police officer rangers to carry firearms, some do not. Clarification. I was not a police officer. I was an emergency hire park ranger EHPR. At the time, the city had a severe shortage of officers and a huge homelessness problem in the parks. The city of Los Angeles voted to grant a handful of emergency positions to the department. As an EHPR, we went through security guard training, 837 power to arrest training, LAPD's dispatch school to get certified to use the CA's criminal databases, wildland fire school, low/high angle search and rescue school, and emergency medical technician, EMT, school. The appointment lasted 1 year, or as long as it took to go through full police backgrounds and get into a police academy. I worked as a safety officer for a few years, then as an emergency hire for 11 months. I cleared backgrounds, but decided to move to the private sector a week before the academy. This was a personal decision, but influenced by the tension against law enforcement in 2015/2016 and the fact that our department did not arm police officer rangers, but demanded full police officer duties. I have tremendous respect for our police officers, and especially for the police officer rangers that are unarmed performing police duties. Those dudes have balls that clank. Note, don't quote me on the legal stuff, it is likely I'm wrong. Not a cop, but I did get stopped by one for eating a taco. I worked at a community college in LA that had a high school right next to it. Well, there was a lot of drugs sold through the fence at the high school, so there was always a cops driving up and down the street between the schools. Couldn't get a parking pass since I just worked at the school, so I always parked on that street. Hit up Taco Bell for lunch and was sitting in my car eating my double-decker tacos when a cop drove past. Next thing I know, he's flipping a U-turn and heading right for me. He slides to a stop driver window and yells at "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Stunned, I just said eating my lunch. Well, he isn't buying it and says I'm hiding something. I just hold up my taco and looked so confused. He burst out laughing and peeled out. Saw him a few times after that, and he always waved and had the biggest grin on his face. Not a cop. Family friend was. Pulled a guy over who was speeding profusely. Guy was obviously disheveled. He said he was headed to the hospital because he had a tick on his penis. Cop was confused, but he escorted him there, then waited in the lobby to check on him/see if he was blowing smoke. After a while, he asked the desk what was going on, why it took so long to take a tick off his penis. Her reply, "It wasn't on it. It was in it. I actually met someone this happened to." He said he got a tick in his dick, about an inch in, he said, when he was 17, and had to go to the hospital to get it out. He said the pretty young nurse with the forceps and the alcohol was enjoying herself far too much, and he was not enjoying himself at all. He said he wasn't interested in sex for quite a while after that. I guess it took time for the trauma to fade. One of the funnier ones that I remember. We got a call for a kid. He was 18 and a gang member, brandishing a firearm. He had pulled up his shirt pretending to brandish a firearm to intimidate somebody. The person calling only saw a holster. After we got there, he kept telling us it wasn't a gun but a dildo. We took him down at gunpoint, and he was right. He was walking around with a holstered, black dildo. Why? Because he could haha. Former cop here. I was behind a vehicle that couldn't stay in the lane, kept swerving, etc. It was 1 AM, and I think another drunk idiot on the road. Pull him over. Guy is a straight up asshole to me. Curse me out, yelling at me, and I notice his speech is slurred. I get him out to car, and I can smell a fruity smell on his breath, and he has to lean against the car for support. I ask him how much he had to drink, and he tells me to fuck off. By this point I'm ready to bring him in for a DUI, but I just had a feeling something wasn't right. I called EMS to come check him. Blood sugar was at 40. Not drunk, just a diabetic. If I would have arrested him, he probably would have died before I finished the paperwork. Go with your gut if something doesn't seem right. My first ever real call was for a flasher at the local park. When I got there and finally found him, it was a mentally impaired young man 16 to 17 who had a pair of headphones on and a full Pooh Bear. I said, "Hey man, come here, what the hell is going on? You know you have to keep your pants on, especially at the park." He goes on to tell me he had bad itching down his pants and couldn't take it anymore, so he had to rip his pants off and was running home to get help. I said, "Come on, you couldn't make it home first." He said, "No, I had ants in my pants." As sure as shit, according to more than one witness's account, he had been sitting in a sandbox playing at the park and accidentally on a nest of red ants that had crawled up his pant legs. Was doing a tour as an MP, not my normal job, but whole other story, and we got called on a domestic. At the house, there is this huge con-fed guy about 6 feet 4 inches and 275, and a petite Asian girl about 4'10" inches and 95 pounds soaking wet. The whole house was in disarray, and the call had come because of yelling heard by the neighbors. She was crying and talking in an Asian language that none of us understood, and kept gesturing toward her huge husband. He wasn't talking. We wrap him up, take him to the station, and are trying to interview him, but he's not saying much. We intend to charge him with domestic assault. We noticed somewhere along the way that he has horrible welts all along the backs of his hands and along his forearms. It took a lot of prying, but we finally got out of him that his wife would beat him with wire coat hangers when she was mad, and apparently that was pretty often. He was too embarrassed to admit to anybody that he was being abused by his wife, who was less than a third of his size. We finally got it straightened out, turned her over to the local police, and barred her from base. Hopefully the guy got the help he needed. I'm running booking one night. Guy gets brought in for possessing a truly stupendous amount of drugs. Him talking like 2 Rubbermaid totes full of shrooms, a huge bag of weed, and enough heroin to overdose half the county. Well, says he, I'm a informant, and they told me to make the drop so they could be there and raid the crap out of everybody and let me go for helping. Hurry. Face left please. Guy is like, I'm telling you dude, they're gonna be super pissed that you country retards fucked up their bust. Whatever, get in the holding cell and shut up. About 3 hours later 3 guys show up, D agents. They're super pissed that our deputies fucked up their bust. I go back to the holding cell to let the guy out, and he's just like, they're super pissed huh? Yeah. Told you so. I was driving with my fiancé, and we went through a roadblock where they checked registration and shit, and we get to the cops and they ask for our registration. I'm sitting in the passenger seat, so I open up the glove box and right there is a clear, unmarked baggie filled to the brim with catnip. I completely forgot it was there and just froze. Wide-eyed, I turned to look at the cop shining his light through my open window and he's frozen too, just staring at the baggie with this look on his face like, really? I just started immediately professing, OMG, I swear to God this is catnip. You can take it and smell it or test it or whatever, like I swear. And at this point it's just so ridiculous that I start cracking up, and the cop takes it and reasonably deduces I'm telling the truth, and he starts laughing and calls his partner over and tells her what happened, and they both just cackled away for a minute and sent us on our way.